Well, it's about time I lived up to the Archivist part of my channel header, so welcome to The Archives, a retrospective show about comics. Be it focusing on a specific character like we are today, a storyline, or just a title, this show marathons comic books from the big names like Marvel and DC to the lesser well-known names like Oni Press and Dynamite in order to excavate and archive the rich histories buried deep underneath the wikis and retcons. With that said, let's begin this in-depth retrospective with the feline fatale herself, Catwoman. The tale of Selina Kyle's publication origins are pretty straightforward. Bob Kane and Bill Finger, wanting to add a bit more sex appeal for the men and an attempt to widen the female audience, created a femme fatale based around the original vamp herself, Jean Harlow. Though Hedy Lamarr has been raised as another possible inspiration, Kane himself actually named Harlow, so that could just be apocryphal. As for her motif of cats, it's actually really easy to see why someone would pick cats as a theme. Though I've heard some criticism that his reasoning was a bit chauvinistic. Look it up if you want to know what I'm talking about. It's in Bob Kane's 1989 biography, Batman and Me. So she made her first appearance as the Cat in Batman #1 in 1940, with no mask but killer looks, at least drawn for the 40s anyways. In this, she's a mastermind thief who uses those stellar looks to muddle Batman's mind so she can escape with the necklace she stole. Interestingly, her next appearance in the following issue has her trading information to Batman to evade imprisonment, not to mention trying to double-cross everybody and get Joker's loot in the scuffle. It was this issue that she was first referenced as Catwoman, though with a hyphen and still no real cat theme, so mostly it's name only. Next, she pops up in the next issue, only this time in her first official costume, which, well, the bright yellow and red coloration with the furry full head mask is kind of awkward, but she's not really a burglar yet, so I can't hold that against her. But in this, she gets double-crossed by her gang only for Batman to rescue her. But before he could lock her up with the rest of the crooks, she uses those feminine wiles again, cementing the first on-panel kiss between the two. Yeah, it is so she could slip out while he's adjusting his tights, but still, it worked pretty well, and it's how she gets away from Batman in her next appearance in Batman #10, The Princess of Plunder, where she's sporting a new black and purple version of her furry cat face costume. But here we also see Batman save her life from a rogue henchman, showing her actually possibly developing feelings for him because of it. So Batman issue 15 starts off with her riding a cat through the sky. It's only the title page for her story, so don't get excited. Wait until the Silver Age for that. This one actually shows a hell of a twist, with Catwoman falling in love with Bruce Wayne and actually going straight for a time. Straight being that she's no longer a crook. The problem with that is someone else loves Bruce, and Catwoman, seeing if Bruce really loves her back, pretends to be that woman, and, well, Bruce being Bruce says that he's just doing a favor for Batman, breaking Catwoman's heart and turning back to a life of crime. It's not as emotional as it would have been written today, but still is pretty interesting considering this could be the start of their on-off relationship. She then seduces Alfred in issue 22, just to trap Batman, which fails, but then in her next appearance in number 35, she's actually being fingerprinted and being locked up. Yeah, she does escape on the next page with some kind of hypnotic pendant, but it does at least seem to be a sort of follow-up to issue 22's ending. She also changes her look into something closer to her iconic outfit, with a purple hood cowl ensemble that actually kind of makes her look like Batgirl a little. At least in the first panel she shows up in it, especially since she has her miscolored hair being red instead of blonde. Yeah, I'll get into the whole hair changing colors thing later on. This one actually shows her having a 9 lives gimmick, so she can rebuild her gang faster, having her henchmen throw rubber knives and shoot blanks at her, all for the fun to heist diamonds off a dirigible. After her dirigible follies, we get a Christmas Tale from Batman #39. It is a pretty standard story. Catwoman tries to pull off a heist with cats, Batman goes to stop her. The only thing that really worth noting, besides her doing a "join me and we can rule the underworld together" shtick, we actually get to see her save Batman from being shot. Sure, it's one of her own henchmen, but it's just a nice thing to see, for reflecting the relationship that may form, or has already started forming. And now we hop over to Detective Comics #122, where she appears with her classic Golden Age outfit, the green cape and purple cowl, looking much more inspired by the Batman's look of the day, which if given her history thus far wouldn't be too far of a stretch if she was trying to mirror him. And the comparisons don't stop there. We're also introduced to the kitty car, which has one thing better than the Batmobile: it can jump. Which actually leads to the climax of this comic where she jumps a bridge but no one knows if she lives or dies at the end. I want to bring up that these are the days where continuity really wasn't truly a thing in these picture books. As her next appearance in Batman number 42, she's in prison as though she hadn't had the adventures in Detective Comics 122. But really, the only interesting thing about this issue is, besides using fictional fake felines for her follies, she escapes from prison in a really kind of awesome way. She is given a book in jail with the signal to spell cat, that would be the pages 3, 1, and 20, balling them up and then lighting them on fire to blow the door off her prison cell. Yeah, it's so very comic booky, but it works on a generalist level that I think is kind of neat. In Batman number 45, she uses 7 dwarves to assist her, but when midgets step up, Batman has to stomp them right back down. Then in Batman number 47, it's a pretty typical she broke out of jail and goes to get jewels kind of story, but the next issue is a real pride and joy for Golden Age Catwoman. Batman number 62 is the original origin story for our feline fatale. So Mr. X breaks Catwoman out of jail so they can be partners. Well, while on a solo heist, a building almost falls on Batman and Robin, but Catwoman hops in to save them, only to be knocked unconscious by the debris. When she awakes, she's in the Batcave, having no memory of her life of crime. In fact, she asks about the passengers. That's right. Her name is Selina Kyle, and she's a stewardess, or was until she was struck over the head and then turned to a life of crime. Her father owned a pet shop, and that's where she learned all about cats. Well, she uses her newfound goodness to help Batman and Robin catch Mr. X. And with the caper closed, Miss Kyle hands over her Catwoman outfit to the commissioner, swearing that Catwoman has retired. I could just wrap up my video series here because clearly Selina Kyle will never return.
Lies and slander!
Yeah, okay, spoilers, she makes a comeback in 3 issues. Not exactly a lengthy time, I know. However, Batman number 65 does keep the continuity, unlike the Detective Comics hiccup earlier, with the title asking whether or not she's on the side of good or is back to her old ways. Well, the truth of the matter is, it actually kind of leaves you guessing for a bit. While she does inevitably turn out to be fighting the good fight, the first half of this story, with cat-themed crimes and very ambiguous clues that may be circumstantial, but in a world where costume crime fighters and villains are a thing, you find a horde of cats attacking a jewelry store, you would instantly think, why not the cat-themed villainess? 4 issues after that, however, we get to see the King of Cats, the moniker of what I assume would be Proto-Catman. Actually, this is another solid, though still very aged, story about Catwoman being tempted back to the dark side. And we see, as the reader, that she does get tempted back over. She dons her green cape again and joins the Cat King. But in a twist, the reason she went over to the Cat King's side was to try and reform her brother. Yep, Carl Kyle is the off-his-meds brother of Selina. I bet he'll be involved in a lot of future events. Right. Or we can hop over to Detective Comics again and, well, due to newspaper articles retelling about how Batman conquered Catwoman, made the then-reformed Selina Kyle long for the days of excitement and villainy. Again, she dons her cape and cowl and becomes the Catwoman, complete with a new kitty car. She then goes on her usual routine of crime, but like last time it ends on a cliffhanger of whether she's dead or not, though sadly no grand leaps in her jalopy. Batman number 84 is a pretty standard story of Selina, now firmly back as Catwoman, rigging a beauty contest so she can win the prize. Yeah. And to wrap up her Golden Age run, Detective Comics number 211. This issue is her first appearance in a jungle setting, where she lures the dynamic duo to her island, but decides to have a cat and mouse game with them instead of just killing them outright. As you do. This obviously backfires and they foil her diamond mining operation, but she rides off on the back of a big-ass tiger. So 1954 was the last year we'd see her. This was largely due to her character being a possible violation of the Comic Code Authority's developing rules for female portrayal that started that very year. It would take over a decade to see her emerge back onto the comic scene. But first, a wrap-up of her Golden Age appearances. Catwoman is amazing. Reading through these first stories of hers, you can see why she struck a chord with young readers, both girls and boys. She's formidable to Batman with her tricks and plots, while also being able to use her raw femininity to escape Batman countless times. It is hard for some people to look back with the current views that we hold of the 40s and 50s and understand that this character wasn't the stereotypical woman of the era, but was an equal to Batman even if she was on the fence as to which team she played for. Also, you will never know how much I dislike her first Detective Comics appearance, giving her gimmicks and accessories that one could analyze as her becoming more like her crush Batman. It was written as though the writer had been given a sentence to describe that she was a cat-themed person, and that was it. Though to be fair, I'm looking at it over 50 years later, so this look is obviously skewed a little bit. Another interesting thing to note is that before we learned her secret identity, her hair changed colors and her finer features changed. While originally I thought that this was just a colorist issue, I slowly really started building in my mind that due to the nature of her creation, as a character she originally didn't embody one single woman. Instead, her looks changed in universe as disguises and the like, but outside it was a reflection that Catwoman, before being cemented with a name or backstory, was meant to represent any woman. But enough fan theories, let's continue the video with a gander at her Silver Age appearances. But before I go into the Silver Age, I'd like to point out that the Silver Age wasn't some brand new world like any of the crises that have come before. Really, the Silver Age just marks a point of reference, that being the first appearance of Barry Allen as the new Flash in Showcase number 4 in 1956. It did test the waters and led to an eventual splitting of the worlds, leaving the Golden Age and Earth 2, but that's a whole debate unto itself, because unlike every other hero that seemed to have been rebooted in 1959, Batman and Superman did not, so it is tricky to pinpoint when Batman and Superman hit the Silver Age's new world. But honestly, none of that matters, because Catwoman didn't appear until 1966, close to when the Silver Age would end. First in March, when Julie Newmar portrayed her on the Batman TV show of the time, and then in November, where Catwoman finally made her comeback in comics in, oh lord, Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane number 70. Oh boy, her first Silver Age appearance in an age where characters could really only fight monsters, aliens, and other relatively harmless creatures. How did the feline fatale work out? Well, she brainwashes Lois Lane into thinking that she is Catwoman, and while that's going on, she kisses Superman that then turns him into a cat. Okay, I will admit that I really dislike the attitude of comics during the Silver Age, so it may color my perception on the rest of this video. I will say that I do like her new outfit, which is her green cape and purple dress, only instead of being a dress, it's a catsuit fittingly. But then again, this really was the time for pointless storylines, because seduction of the innocent really ruined it for everyone. So we'll jump ahead past some muck to the final page of a story in Detective Comics number 369, where she thinks that Batgirl is trying to steal Bruce away from her. Yes, they aren't actually dating yet, and it's weird. The story is followed up on in Batman number 197, where Catwoman appears in a very out-of-left-field green catsuit, which I suppose is meant to look more like her outfit in the show, except very, very green. It's like if the Riddler gave her this outfit. Well, the plot of this issue is that Catwoman has become a crook catcher to try and woo Batman and show up Batgirl. How'd that go? Well, what do you think? Batman doesn't propose to her because clearly Catwoman is insane with jealousy, and she turns back to being evil. She's clearly off her meds on this one, though they do actually mention that she's reformed once before, so it gets a nice nod to the Golden Age stories. But that all changes. See, in Batman number 210, Catwoman gets another new look, and it's very sweet. Christmas! Oh god, man, that design, yeesh. So yeah, in her new outfit with the, oh come on, okay, with her Cadillac? Also, that really goofy mask is actually a very basic version of her cat goggles that allow her to see in the dark. But oh, if only they were the only things she brought to the party. She gets 8 paroled villainesses, all with a gripe against a man, I don't know, just go with it, to wear exact duplicates of her costume and shape up to look like her. They're her feline furies. Yeah, I know. And all I have to say is that one of those feline furies is named Big Barbara. If you don't know why that's funny, your ass better call some Kirby. Let's skip a bit ahead to 1972, where she goes to try and pilfer a cursed ruby right out of Wonder Woman's hand. Well, technically Diana Prince's hand, because at the time, she was depowered due to the Amazonians leaving our dimension. Actually, this is interestingly a two-parter with Catwoman acting as a competitor and partner with Diana, with Wonder Woman number 201 acting with them getting the ruby, but then number 202 slings them into a fantasy dimension where they have to team up to defeat an evil sorceress. Needless to say, this little romp doesn't actually affect Catwoman's criminal career throughout the Silver Age. And really, it isn't until Batman number 266 in 1975 that something major for her character actually happens. And that's her hopping back over to her purple dress and green cape after busting out of jail. See, my problem with the Silver Age is that it does have a status quo, but it's so dull to talk about. Catwoman breaks out of jail or goes to steal something, Batman comes in to save the day, hijinks ensues. So let's go with a quick rundown of her exploits until we hit something relevant. Let's see, she fails to take down a girl running around calling herself Catgirl, first appearance of someone with that official name by the way. She drops her US citizenship so she can become ambassador to Sidaria, and gets thwarted by Batman and Wonder Woman. Oh, during this time they showcase a lot of Earth 2 stories in the offbeat comics like DC Superstars and Batman Family, showing Huntress for the first time and really cementing home that the current continuity isn't from the Golden Age. This one's interesting though. In 1979, Selina Kyle reforms again and asks Bruce Wayne out on a date. And they do have a short fling, and then a few issues later, she learns that she has an illness that could kill her at any moment. So Catman blows into town. No, not her brother from earlier, but a man inspired by Catwoman, who doesn't become a decent character until Secret 6. Ooh, Secret 6, I miss you. Catman has a magical cloak that actually heals Catwoman, but not until after being parboiled alive in a geyser, but they do call off their romance for the moment. Here's something even more interesting. So Catwoman actually got her first solo story as backup, starting with Batman number 332, though it does tie into the main storyline of that piece, The Lazarus Affair, a 4-part story where Batman, Robin, Catwoman, and King Faraday are up against Ra's al Ghul, and more importantly, it really shows the swing that Catwoman has made from being just a burglar to an anti-heroine. Of course, a few issues later in Batman 348, Catwoman gets hired to protect a presidential candidate and his wife. Then in 350, she has to pretend to be a stripper named Candy that looks exactly like her to solve her murder. Yeah. Of course, a bit later, an unhinged Catwoman decides to go after Vicky Vale because she's Batman's new beau, and well, this is the issue where Batman puts his foot down finally, that there can and will never be anything between them ever again. Fun times. All the while, other comics were publishing Tales of Earth 2, where Catwoman and Batman have gotten married, sired a daughter, but all that changed when the Crisis of Infinite Earths came in, and they wiped out all other Earths to make a single Earth. Though, sad fact, the then Earth 2 version, which was the pre-Crisis designation for the Golden Age characters, died as seen in the origin of Huntress in DC Superstars number 17. But she dies in Batman's arms, so it's kind of sweet. While Earth 1, the then Silver Age world, she is last seen in Batman number 400, battling alongside Batman, ending this run of the character in 1986. Since we're reaching the time where Batman Year 1 came out, twisting the Batman mythos on its head and generally giving a new start to the Bat franchise, I think here is where I'm going to end for today. My overall view of her time before the modern age is that as a character, she was at her best when working with Batman for her own ends. That isn't to say that she wasn't an interesting or unique character since her inception, but they truly start spinning their wheels for development with the character after her and Bats finally got a relationship going. It sort of reminds me of Ross and Rachel from Friends. I actually think Jennifer Aniston might make a neat Catwoman. Okay, before I start thinking too hard on that, I'll see you all next week with the next installment of Archives, where we delve into the post-Miller world of Batman and his feline fatale. We last left Catwoman at the turning of the modern age, with her whole career up to that point being talked about in Batman comics, but for the most part outside of a couple backup stories, she was just a supporting character, never being able to take the spotlight of her own until nearly 50 years after her introduction. I do have to make the disclaimer that while I will be focusing on her solo comics run from here on out, unless there is a specific crossover or important event that happens elsewhere that really must be brought up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with her reimagining. When Freaky Frank Miller penned Batman Year 1 in 1987, he retold not only Batman's origin, but also that of Catwoman. It struck such a chord with readers and critics that Catwoman's canon origins were retold with Year 1 as a template. This new origin was published in 1989 as a Catwoman 4-issue miniseries by Mindy Newell, J.J. Birch, and Michael Baer. This origin told of Selina Kyle as a prostitute, who is beaten and raped by her pimp, but still can't leave the life. Getting the number from a guy who can teach her to defend herself, she starts visiting a man named Ted. Between being a hooker with a heart of gold and training to rip someone's heart out, Batman is starting his own war against the scum of Gotham. Selina and her roommate/only friend, Holly Robinson, are there when Batman eludes Gotham PD using bats, giving Selina the idea that if there's a bat, then why not a cat? Dressing up in a cat bondage suit, or a bondage fursuit. I'm not sure terminology for a cat fetish suit made of leather. But anyways, she dons the suit and goes after her pimp. As she is kicking the ever-loving hell out of him, Sister Magdalene sees her. She's not just any sister either, she's Selina's actual sister. Sister Maggie goes to the police with this information, but Stan the pimp couldn't be arrested. And Detective Flannery doesn't believe that this Catwoman is Selina Kyle. So Sister Maggie starts walking the streets alone trying to find Selina, which obviously leads to her being captured, but not yet. First, that night Selina goes to see her in a new cat suit, one less gimpy. After the talk, then Maggie gets captured by Zoot Suit Reagan. I know, it's a horrible name, but look at him. He looks like a melted Ronald Reagan. Selina's on the trail, though, interrogating past acquaintances and whatnot. Meanwhile, Batman is on the case to find Sister Maggie, too. But even being tailed by the police, that doesn't stop Selina from reaching Stan and her sister and slugging it out with her pimp. Stan throws Sister Maggie from the catwalk they're on, but she grabs the side. Catwoman tries to save her, but Stan knocks Maggie off the ledge. But as soon as she does, Catwoman knocks him off. However, Batman is able to save Sister Maggie while Stan faceplants into the stage below, obviously not making it into any sequels. Maggie tries hounding Selina about Stan's death, but she doesn't stand for it and leaves out a window. Batman helps Sister Maggie to waiting police outside, while Holly is questioned by the cops. Later, Selina goes to the church to check on Maggie. However, as they talk, Holly comes in, battered and beaten thanks to Captain Ethan Strunk of the GCPD. Selina dons her catsuit, and almost as soon as she leaves, Batman talks to Maggie about Holly. Thus, the first round of Bat or Cat starts as he goes to stop Catwoman from killing Captain Strunk. He gets there before she can beat him to death, but then they talk. As she is trying to tell her case, she kisses Batman, then knocks him down with her whip, scratching his bat symbol. The first round went to her, but there will definitely be others. Is all that miniseries in her modern continuity? Well, not quite, but it is the best groundwork to start with. It's this miniseries, plus being one of the main villains in Batman Returns, that in 1993 landed her an ongoing series. The first series itself takes place after nightfall, when Bane breaks that darn bat and takes over the city's underworld. We find Miss Selina Kyle working for Bane, stealing jewels and the like from Gotham. She's living under an assumed identity with Arizona, a decent stand-in for Holly Robinson, and her pimp, in a manner, is Leopold, her go-to for jobs and fencing goods. The first storyline deals with Bane putting a hit out on Selina because he doesn't have anything to truly control her with, well, besides taking cuts from her heists. So what does he do? He uses that big brain of his to sway a hitman sent after him to go after Catwoman. And it works too. Selina's apartment gets blown up, and the news even gets a nice video of Catwoman saving Arizona from the burning apartment. Catwoman tracks the man down to Santa Prisca, getting Bruce Wayne, currently in a wheelchair, to fly her down there. In Santa Prisca, Catwoman learns of Bane's lineage, but even while she's surviving an attempted military coup, John Paul Valley, as Batman, takes out Bane's criminal empire. But the storyline isn't all pointless, since Catwoman gets to emotionally beat Bane by feeding Bane lies about his parentage. Next, Catwoman is asked by a bunch of hippies to save the rainforest, where wildlife is dying because of a neurotoxin. She gets the toxin, but she is also set up by John Paul Batman and the police, assuming she's going to sell it. She gets away, as she often does, but she doesn't have the real toxin. She then uses the bat signal to confront the new bats to try and talk reason into him, using the fact that Bruce trusted him with the mantle to get him to help her stop the release of the real neurotoxin at an eco-conference. Batman breaks in to assist, but Catwoman gets the toxin away safely and replaces it with a simple tear gas before slipping off into the night. John Paul Bat's shaking his fist as she flies off. Jumping through a bit, we get the first appearance of the villainous Zephyr, who seems to really be quite good at getting angsty boys to do what she wants, though that story ends with one of those boys falling to their death. Then it's a look at a personal grudge when hired goons break in and steal a cybernetic enabling chip thingy meant for prosthetics to be used to make cyborg soldiers. But as she starts working her way up to the head scumbag, John Paul Batz interrupts because one of the men killed his father and he's on a murderous rampage at the moment. However, Bruce Wayne, having healed up for the most part, comes in to stop John Paul from his murderous ways. However, that's also tied into the Night's End event, as well as the next one being a direct aftermath of that event. Ooh, and the one after that is a 0-hour tie-in. Yay, tie-ins! After that onslaught of tie-ins, Chuck Dixon took over as writer from Joe Duffy, which actually added a retractable wrist-mounted grappling hook as well as a whip to her arsenal. But even more so, his first issue in, Catwoman gets caught by the police and is actually offered a job stealing for the feds. Under their forced employ, she steals a prince's crown. The funny part is that makes him want to marry her, for her spirit and gumption. Go figure. The feds come in to break up the wedding, but Catwoman's forceful fiancé actually takes out the strike force that comes to collect her, and she escapes. Where to? She goes to South America to find a Nazi that apparently has been given the same deal as Selina, so she uses him as blackmail to get the bomb out of her, and Dixon basically gets to reset Catwoman's wanted status and overall standing in the DC universe with an aged Nazi. Kudos, actually. Now freelance again, she gets hired to steal a super secret script from the competition of a major studio, which becomes a rescue mission, and by the end she actually has to write the script herself. I should make a joke about how she got paid $1 million for the job to steal the script, so she made the best pay as sole screenwriter even by today's standards, but that's not funny. Bit sad, actually. Anyways, what number are we on? Issue 22 is when Deborah Pomerantz takes over for this 3-part story where Catwoman is pitted against a drug cartel who's gunning for her and the Gotham underworld after she stole their dagger. But Dixon comes back to pen a one-shot story with Catwoman breaking into a millionaire's funhouse before Alan Grant takes up the pen for part 2 of the short Secret of the Universe storyline, where Catwoman deals with Catman who stole the Lucky Shroud off some island. But as she's getting away, Batman chases her and they both plunge into the sewers, into the waiting hordes of Ratcatcher's Rat Army. But they escape, and it's kind of a letdown. Next, issue 27 is the Underworld Unleashed tie-in issue. Underworld Unleashed was basically an event where Neron, the devil, offers deals for souls of both heroes and villains, and the fallout of those deals. So in this one, Catwoman is hired by Gorilla Grodd's political rival to steal a valuable jade monkey before he can get it and secure his reign over Gorilla City. As with most Grodd stories, it ends with him being dragged off in chains. After working her first score with a new team and having to deal with the Penguin trying to pilfer their pot, Catwoman 31 is part 4 of the Contagion storyline, running through most Bat Family titles at the time. Long story short, a dangerous plague is unleashed in Gotham City. This particular issue has Catwoman teaming up with Robin, who's Tim Drake at the time, to track down a survivor to try and get a blood sample. However, they have to fend off a veritable army of men trying to kill him, and by the end the survivor does get killed, but Robin takes a blood sample hoping it'll be enough. Then the next issue is part 10, with Catwoman tracking another survivor from Greenland, but when she gets back to Gotham, the people who hired her were all killed, and Batman brings up that a vaccine can't be made from the survivors. But even after being on the side of good, Catwoman goes back to her life of high-end petty theft, with going to Realasia? We'll call it Realasia, to steal something, but instead gets kidnapped by the Collector, who forces her to make some Indiana Jonesian escapade through some Middle Eastern ruins, which leads into the Legacy storyline for the Bat Family. Though really hers is a reactive story, not having her interact with Batman and Robin and Nightwing during her one-shot tie-in, where she just escapes and takes out Hellhound, who's working for the Collector. Then there's also another quickie issue of her stealing from someplace before we get into Year 2. Year 2 was similar to the whole Year 1 thing, but instead of changing the origins, it's more of giving back of, what else, the second year on the job. Year 2 also saw Doug Moench take on the writing helm, and believe me, it shows. So Batman catches Catwoman, who's just called the Cat Burglar, but she escapes police custody and breaks Penguin, Two-Face, and Joker out of custody just to keep Batman busy. Joker and Penguin wander off as Two-Face flips his coin and goes to kill Catwoman. All the while, Bruce is going on and on about how evil shouldn't tempt him like Catwoman does. Mind you, they shared about 2 pages in this thing, and only 3 panels of it were even remotely tempting, and that was her licking his cheek wound. Anyways, Joker does his fun, as he's ought to do, covering up for Catwoman stealing an Egyptian dollhouse from a museum? Well, okay then. So she goes back to her lair. Two-Face and his goons are there to kill her. She takes them out with relative ease before Batman shows up, and yet again they have a air quote moment, which I suppose works if Bruce has never ever seen a boob before, but I digress. Catwoman and Batman both go to stop Penguin so she can try swaying him again. This doesn't work, and she gets away. This leads back to the present with Commissioner Gordon giving the Catwoman case to a detective, though since the feds wiped her slate clean, he's going off of all of Jim's hard copy case files. Selene has to go back to her old hideout and recover the dollhouse that she stole in Year 2, since she apparently forgot it existed. Well, she classes with Detective Moreland McShane, and gets away with the dollhouse, leaving her diary behind though. So while being investigated, a couple of new cat-themed feline fatales pop up to ruin Selina's day. She-Cat, who is really just ripping off Selina's old MO of stealing cat-themed things, and Cyber-Cat, who just seems to have a huge hard-on for wanting to kill Catwoman. Oh wait, no, sorry. She-Cat's actual name is Alley Cat, and she steals a true first edition of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from Two-Face. But since his only lead is a woman dressed as a cat, he thinks it's our dear friend Catwoman, which leads into a fight over the book until Two-Face is back in police custody, and She-Cat or Alley Cat or whatever is out cold. And Selina starts dating McShane for obvious reasons. The obvious reason being, 'cause it's funny. Then Catwoman gets recruited into Spider, an evil organization who wants her to head up basically their theft leg. But as usual, it's just the long way around so that she can steal from them. And after that, Cybercat reappears for her final fight with Selina, who gets her own special power armor just for the occasion. It's a fun way to spend the 50th issue, definitely. Then we get a team-up of Helena Bertinelli, or the Huntress if you want to go with masks, where both of them team up to take out a large drug cartel. But if that's not enough, a serial killer named the Headhunter is killing again after months of being dormant. Of course, the big twist is, dun dun dun, are you ready for this? Moreland McShane's been him the entire time, and finding out that Catwoman is the girl he's been dating completely made him snap. And in a fit of madness and mood swings, he tries to kill her, but ultimately kills himself. After that ride with Moank, Devin K. Grayson takes over writing with number 54, where Catwoman keeps stealing the same diamond over and over, then giving it back so that she can steal it when they've upped the security, and then dealing with the sleazy SOB who ruins lives by being a sleazy 90s businessman. Issues 56 and 57 cover Catwoman's point of view when the biblical earthquake hit Gotham in the event's cataclysm. Catwoman is trapped in a building helping survivors, which hits her hard, so she decides to be part of the anti-looting hero patrol, where she goes to take out some frustration on Poison Ivy. But as soon as Gotham starts recovering, she's back to her burglary game. Though when Scarecrow breaks out of Arkham Asylum, he starts gunning for Catwoman to test his new serum that only affects women. After a fear trip out, Catwoman feels that her fear makes her better, so she shoots up the entire syringe of the stuff. It's around here that we get a lot of Catwoman's backstory. Her mother committed suicide, her father beat her, and yet we find out her greatest fear is not being in control. This entire revelation hardens her, though the next two one-shot issues show her softening with going to rob and then protect maybe a bank, and then teaming up with Nemesis, a really good spy when it comes to impersonating her who needs her help. But oh no, the Clown Prince of Crime escapes and decides in his genius insanity he wants to play cat and mouse with Catwoman. But what a twist, Catwoman's the mouse. But all of this is because Joker wants to hurt, air quote, Batman's girlfriend. Cause like when Batgirl was alluded to be Batman's squeeze way back when, the headlines must surely always be right. Someone's been listening to the Vox too much. After that, given that Gotham is on the road to no man's land, with a heavy heart Selina leaves Gotham, eventually winding up in the Big Apple. There, she takes over Randolph Industries using blackmail and ups the profit margin by 600%. Sweet Christmas, it's no wonder she decides while on that buzz to run for mayor. And wouldn't you know it, the fact that she doesn't exist electronically raises some eyebrows from other mayoral candidates, and they try offing her. Then using the trickster to spy on her, to even Catwoman herself saying she'll kill Selina Kyle for him. With her mayoral run hitting a dead end, Catwoman stages Selina Kyle's death and skips on back to Gotham. Though Trickster did have time to move all 50 mil of her money to the Gotham Relief Fund. Oh, that's nice. And so we come to the epic event that left Gotham unincorporated, walled off, and controlled by the big-time villains. Yes, it's Arkham City if the entire city was blocked off, and there was an earthquake that destroyed most of the landscape. But John Ostrander takes over from Grayson on writing for this storyline. Catwoman, on her way back to Gotham, gets asked by Batman to come to Gotham, to steal CDs out of Gotham. You heard me. Well, she gets the discs, but then puts them up on the internet for auction and draws out Maxie Zeus and a couple of others, including Hardcases Inc., the owner of the discs. But the discs do make it back to Batman before Catwoman passes out on a roof, only to wake up in Penguin's home, naked. Don't worry, it's nothing funny, he's just getting her costume washed while they discuss that she needs to steal for him. And what does he want her to steal? Well, to quote him, he wants her to steal enough to be noticeable. So she steals everything. Well, okay, not everything, just power suits with men still in them, and the construction equipment. Also, Penguin can attempt to negotiate with the current mayor, Lex Luthor. Yes, that Lex Luthor. So Catwoman's just a pawn for Penguin's grab at being the head of the entire underworld again. But Catwoman destroys Penguin's base. Her real payback is with Lex, and if you know Lex Luthor, her payback is brilliant. Yes, I'm not going to spoil it here. And after 77 issues, Jim Balent steps down as series penciler for Staz Johnson, and John Ostrander is replaced by Bronwyn Carlton. So, with No Man's Land over and things returning to normal, Selina makes an attempt to steal a crystal spire from a museum, but someone else steals it, though Commissioner Gordon swears to get that darn Catwoman. So reluctantly, Bruce Wayne agrees to let them modify one of his donations to the museum so they could trap her. She gets caught and actually has her day in court, although since no records exist for Selina Kyle, with the whole FBI electronic swipe and No Man's Land destroying GCPD's records, she's tried as Jane Doe and sentenced to life at one of those rehabilitation centers for criminals. Ooh boy, if you enjoy women in prison movies, well, you'll love issue 80. There's the sassy black girl that teaches Selina the ropes. There's an hardcore evil authority, cafeteria fights, shower scenes, all the ingredients to make it into a Cinema Snob episode. He's still relevant, right? But then things get brought down to an emotional level when we explore her abusive childhood, her mother's suicide, and her father drinking himself to death before she ran away and became a pickpocket. This leads into her starting and leading a riot to take over the rehabilitation center. And you know how she actually gets out of this rehabilitation center? A fellow patient that helped Selina talk through her problems in the solitary cell next to hers slits her throat and rushes her outside to an ambulance. There she tases the other passenger and puts on her Harlequin hood. That's right, the other patient is Dr. Harleen Quinzel. For those in the know, her first main Universe DC role was in Batman 570 as part of No Man's Land, but somewhere in that time she got reprimanded to this facility, and this is definitely the start of the Gotham City Sirens partnership between the two. Really though, Harley is using Catwoman and Jim Gordon's disdain for her to cover up her own fun, but Catwoman comes to her senses, turning on everyone and leaping through a stained glass window, changed and angrier. With this new attitude, she tosses away her kitties, including her actual Catwoman costume, for a corsety thing and a domino mask. While the edgier Selina uses leverage with the mayor to get Gotham to drop his latest investigation into her, though the mayor is personally gunning for Catwoman now. All the while, a gang war between the original children, a gangland group, the police, and a lone gun-toting vigilante breaks out, with Catwoman sort of in the middle. But let's put all this on hold with issue 89 because it's kind of amazing in its own right. It's a one-shot where Harley Quinn is pitching a cartoon about Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and herself to a bunch of producers. It's a great one-shot because it's basically Harley pitching the Gotham Sirens, and it's being twisted so that by the end, Catwoman is a teen from the suburbs with a happy family, with a nuclear physicist father, Harley is a Korean in a wheelchair, and Poison Ivy is actually a guy and the brains of the trio as they solve crime for the CIA. Yeah, it's fun and worth a read all on its own just because of that. So let's get back to the actual story being told. Someone shot Commissioner Gordon. Catwoman number 90 is part 4 of the Officer Down storyline, with the entire Bat family trying to catch Catwoman, thinking that she's the one who shot him, due to all the bad blood between the two of them over the years. However, she has evidence that clears her name. Want even more fun? Well, the next storyline has Catwoman's psyche and Selina Kyle's psyche battling it out. She even has a hostage that she kept thinking was Jim Gordon. But moreover, she totally flips her lid, with the revelation that Maggie, her sister from so long ago, doesn't actually exist. Feeling unlike herself, she breaks into Arkham thinking that Two-Face must be behind this divide, but he points her to the real culprit, the Scarecrow, who put the seeds all the way back when last she screwed over his plans, way back in the late 50s of this series. The finale of this series has Scarecrow captured when he makes a play to strong-arm the mayor, Deathstroke coming to kill Catwoman, plus her trying to finally have a talk to Batman about their relationship, but it all ends with her unconscious in a homeless woman's shopping cart. This final storyline is written by John Francis Moore. That's the end. The series ran from 1993 to 2001, though I did skip the 1 million issue, which was a throwaway one-shot that I'll probably cover in a binging on comics sooner or later. And what do I think? I think the entire series is actually a lot better than I was expecting. While there was some wavering in quality here and there with one-shots scattered throughout and constant sidebars into other storylines, they do flow naturally if you read the crossover stories as a whole, though they did break up the solo storylines throughout the series. Jim Malent is probably my favorite all-time artist on this series, and when you see it, you can see why. His look really keeps a solid flow throughout the series, not to mention he's an icon in his own right for having such a streak on comic books. Writer-wise, I think I'd have to go with Devin Grayson because there's something about the depth that she added to the psychology of Selina Kyle that really gets to me. It's similar to her work on Nightwing, but that's going to be a rant for another day. But we aren't done yet, folks. Next time we venture into her second ongoing series, starting in 2002, which introduced her latest iconic zip-up leather catsuit, Meow! When we last left Catwoman at the end of her first series, she was broken and in a hobo's shopping cart, and that was in July of 2001. The next month, a backup started in Detective Comics 759 called Trail of the Catwoman, written by Ed Brubaker and drawn by Darwin Cook, in which Slam Bradley, a Golden Age character who's been kicking around the DC universe for a while, is hired to find out what happened to Catwoman. And what does he and we as the audience find out? Basically slowly summarizing everything that's happened in the previous series. Seriously, it's kind of an odd break because it's literally series ends, 3 months backup story, new series starts. I think it was because they wanted to go into a new direction with the character, so it was easier to just have this give a summary of the important bits before the new one. So let's dive into this new series. Ed Brubaker and Darwin Cook start the series going with a 4-part story, Anodyne, where Selina Kyle is talking to Dr. Leslie Tompkins about how it's been a few months since she put on the costume and how it's building up for her. But instead of going into her old costume, with the newfound nature of where she stands, she gets a new outfit, which has become her latest iconic look, the leather zip-up catsuit and the goggles, that actually do some things eventually. Oh, and she also has those foot knives that Will Smith had in Wild Wild West for climbing and stuff. But enough of that. So Selina's back in the East End district of Gotham, where her year 1 origin story from '89 was set, and where she starts living with Holly Robinson again. If you haven't gone back and listened to my first video, Holly was a girl she was living with when she decided to become Catwoman the first time. Aside from the freshly dug up setting, we actually get a plot that someone's murdering hookers right in Selina's neighborhood, so she's on the case, stealing intel from the cops and trying to solve the case, since the cops won't because they're just, best way to phrase it, came straight from one of the cops on the scene. Eventually, Selina discovers the culprit is an unfortunate man that is very similar to Clayface, being able to mold himself into any look, and feeling a good sense about doing right without just taking, she dives off into the night. After that first story, Darwin Cook leaves to be replaced by Brad Rader. After a one-off story where Catwoman brings down a drug smuggling ring that uses kids as mules and some dirty cops aplenty, we get an appearance by Slam Bradley, who becomes a series regular. Issues 6 through 9, Disguises, gives us a look into Holly Robinson and how she does work for Selina, including an interesting bit about how, being an ex-junkie, she still sees the world in junkie vision. Basically knowing, okay, they're doing a handoff, that's where to score and everything like that. But while doing her duty for Selina, she witnesses cops execute an undercover cop and even gets shot in the process. Selina, after taking Holly to Leslie, goes to Slam Bradley since he's the one building a case against Gotham City Police Department. Together, they team up with Crispin Allen, who was sent down to investigate the East End Police Department to take down some very crooked cops. And it seems that Black Mask is the kingpin of East End, including using those crooked cops. And I'd get my ear chewed off if I didn't mention that this is when we find out that Holly is in a relationship with her friend Karen, who's a woman. Okay, that's mentioned, moving on. There's another couple of one-off stories, one with Selina helping a childhood friend escape custody and running off to Portugal, and another where she steals a jade cat, saves an old acquaintance, humiliates an old enemy, and the feds all at the same time just for fun. Issues 12 through 16, called Relentless, has Cameron Stewart as head artist. We start with Selina Kyle debuting to Slam Leslie and Holly, her East End community center. Incidentally, a kid stealing Leslie's purse leads Selina back to her roots in Alleytown, which is basically the old ghetto of Gotham, as a friend actually restarted the kid's gang. Meanwhile, Maggie Kyle comes back with her husband. It goes as good as you'd guess. The community center gets bombed, and Maggie and Simon, that's her husband, are kidnapped. Slam gets slammed by a car, saving Holly's life, and we learn that it's Sylvia, Selina's old friend, who's working for the man Selina stole some diamonds from, Black Mask. Again. So, pushed to the brink, Catwoman saves her only friends, leading to the apparent death of Black Mask, and Holly shoots Sylvia. Maggie is sent to a psychiatric center, and Slam and Selina share a kiss. So the next story, No Easy Way Down, issues 17 to 19, has another artistic change of guard, with Javier Pulido on call. This is the immediate follow-up to the whole Relentless storyline, told more episodically, meaning that in each issue there is a section showcasing each person's point of view, like Holly starting to slip back into her junkie behavior, Slam trying to figure out whether or not him and Selina's current tryst is a good idea, while he still works on some disappointing gold digger case, to even Selina's numbness to the whole of everything, to the point where she eventually decides to just start stealing again. Batman goes to her to give her the nudge, but Karen being on her couch when she gets back is what pushes her to go see Holly, and it all just fits together so the healing can begin. Were I going to do gimmicks for these videos, here's where I would have a wheel of artists, just for the fact that every storyline coming out seems to have a different artist, only this time it's Cameron Stewart again. Only instead of trying to be an off-brand Darwin Cook like last time, Stewart seems to be going for a unique feel. So Wild Ride, issues 20 to 24, starts with Selina and Holly taking a road trip to upstate New York, where they meet up with Ted Grant, as in the hero known as Wildcat, as in the guy that has trained pretty much everyone, as in the guy that actually trained Selina in the original miniseries, again talked about last video, who is now going to start training Holly. They then bounce over to Keystone City for a team-up with Captain Cold to try and steal Jake Garrick's old helmet from a museum, with hilarious consequences. Then we get a brief intermission with Slam and Bradley having a dick measuring contest over Selina before Selina and Holly make it to Opal City. In Opal, they run into Bobo Benetti, an ally of the original Starman, who of course knows who Catwoman is. But even more importantly, a subplot that started when Catwoman nearly got killed in New York by some not quite Egyptian cat statue really picks up with the not quite Arabic attackers finally springing on her, though she kicks their butt again with Bobo's help. And finally she ends her holiday in St. Roche, which is pretty much New Orleans if we need to have a real world comparison. Ted Grant meets up with Catwoman there, and together they go to talk to Hawkman and Hawkgirl about the cat statue. But the real treat is that this entire road trip was so Selina could track down Holly's estranged brother Davey. It's actually really quite touching scene. And so after a girls' night out, Selina and Holly head back to Gotham, but so do the evil Egyptian cat cult. Jimmy Palmiotti and Paul Gulacy take up art for the next run, where Catwoman shows the Mafia that replaced Black Mask that the East End is her turf, and she's not going to have innocent lives be lost because of them. They counter, to Penguin's reluctance admittedly, by sending Zeiss, a super badass who has goggles that allow him to see in freeze frame, as well as heightened nerve system for fast reflexes, and abs you could grind Emma Frost on. Unlike the previous stories, which were pretty much set as multiple parts, single stories, issue 25 begins with a single story over multiple issues without so much serializing it, leading to longer arcs such as this one, starting off with issue 25 through 30, dealing with the Zeiss situation before she's saved and taken to the cat cult hideout and explained that she's the chosen one for their goddess in issue 31. Having been wherever the cat cult stayed for over a month, with everyone thinking she's dead, issue 32 has Bruce giving Selina a night truly just for her. So happy that she's alive. Slam makes up with his son, who's a Metropolis police officer and came back after Slam got stabbed by Zeiss during the whole thing, and Holly has been pretending to be Catwoman while she was gone. Issue 33 has Diego almost taking the spot of Paul Gulacy on art just for this issue, which focuses all on Catwoman going back to what got Zeiss after her in the beginning, taking on the Mafia as run by Junior Galante. And issues 34 through 36 are from the Bat Event War Games. But unlike the last volume where the crossovers would be literal continuations, breaking up the ongoing stories to tell about Batman searching for a cure with minor Catwoman involvement, this is more of a tie-in issue than a real Part 7, since Catwoman is just trying to keep the peace in East End while the new gang war of Gotham rages. Though she does run into Stephanie Brown, formerly Robin, who did actually sort of start the whole thing, but only because Bruce Wayne didn't tell anybody anything. I'll eventually cover that storyline. What I truly enjoy about Catwoman during War Game is that she actually got an earpiece to Oracle, which just shows how she's truly embraced being a positive person and an actual part of the Bat family. We also see the return of Black Mask to the series, and Catwoman gets to go one-on-one with Zeiss again, kicking his booty relatively easily this time. Issue 37 gives Selina a breather after the gang war when Holly throws her a surprise birthday party. It's actually a really sweet thing that works so well since this is Ed Brubaker's last issue on the series, and it works to show all he's done for the supporting characters as well as Selina's relationship with them. Issues 38 through 40 is a three-part storyline called Three-Piece Suit by Scott Morris, and Diego Olmos comes back for pencils. A guy with wooden arms calling himself Wooden Nickel is trying to figure out the identity of Catwoman for the Three-Piece Suit's insurance agency who covered the Capes and Cowls damages or something like that. It's actually kind of a neat idea. Then we have Of Cats and Dogs, issues 41 and 42, with yet another changeover to Matteo Casali writing and Brad Walker on art, though Palmiotti does stay on as inker. In this two-parter, Selina uncovers who's been killing more whores in East End, only for it to lead to a dogfighting ring. Interesting. Number 43 is a fun one-shot teaming up Onyx, who protects the Hills district of Gotham, and Catwoman, who have to take out Killer Croc, who's working for Black Mask. Will Pfeiffer becomes head writer, with Peter Woods taking over as artist with issue 44, starting with the One You Love storyline, which starts with people like the ventriloquist, Scarface, and some dude in a jetpack causing trouble in the East End. Hush comes around and makes an offer to get the Black Mask's eye off of East End if Catwoman steals something from him. Something for him. That something is the guy I called Clayface from way back at the start of this volume, but she fails to deliver, so he calls all of his criminal friends from everywhere, Coast City, Keystone City, Star City, everywhere, and tells them that East End has one protector who isn't Batman. So while Hush is off doing the Hush storyline for Batman, to do the right thing for East End, Catwoman joins a group of villains led by Dr. Hugo Strange. Though with the help of Clayface, who wants to become a better person, she's able to get the villains either in custody or scared off of East End for now. Issues 50 through 52, Backward Masking, the JLA has Selina mind-altered to be a hero, negating all of the character building leading to this point. Okay, to be fair, I think it was a tie-in with the Identity Crisis event, since they did the same thing to Dr. Light after some unfortunate things. But really? So now Selina doesn't know if she's a hero or a villain. To make matters worse, Black Mask is gunning for her again, only still wanting to just hurt her even more. He sends Slam Bradley to the hospital, he targets Holly, and nearly kills Slam's son. There's only one way out Selina can see. Issue 52 ends with Selina placing a bullet between Black Mask's eyes, and that's when we enter 1 year later. Issue 53 gives us the lay of the land with the new art team of David Lopez on pencils and Alvaro Lopez on inks. Will Pfeiffer does return as writer though, that's a plus. Selina is no longer Catwoman. She's living in uptown Gotham and she has a bouncing baby girl named Helena. Holly is currently under the skin-tight leather catsuit. Angleman, having waited over a year for his revenge, finally takes it out and nearly gets it, but Holly slips out. Not before the film freak captures it on camera and shows an unmasked, though mostly in shadows, Holly beating up Angleman. So film freak and Angleman team up, and even get a video of Selina and Holly both in costume meeting. Fun little thing I love in this, Selina has a problem fitting into her catsuit because of the baby weight. Just thought that was kind of funny. Since Selina Kyle is now going by Irina Dubovna, thanks to the classic film Cat People, Film Freak makes the connection and goes to her apartment, holding Helena hostage. Selina saves Helena and even calls in Zatanna to mind-wipe them so they forget about her secret identity altogether. Angleman gives himself up, but Film Freak begins to go on a murderous spree, using scenes from classic movies turned deadlier. While all that is going on, Holly is arrested in her Catwoman outfit and is being charged with the murder of Black Mask. So Selina does what she does best. She breaks in and steals Holly out of the interrogation room, and with that out of the way, she can finally focus on Film Freak before he can detonate a nuke all Sideshow Bob-like. And all of that spanned from issue 53 to 61, though the Helena stuff is in a more meanwhile sense. Issue 62, Sons and Daughters, is where we finally uncover the biggest mystery of the 1 year later gap. Who is Helena Kyle's father? Well, the answer, my friends, isn't Batman. Though Wikipedia does put forth that postulation, as well as those that like the whole Helena Kyle angle from Earth 2, say that it is. Sad to say, it's Slam Bradley Jr., Slam's son, who during the 1 year gap had a heat of the moment one night stand with Selina before he died. I think I'll weigh in on this a little later, but it wasn't bad the way they handled it. From issues 63 to 65, we have The Paperweight, which tells the arduous tale of how Selina has to go steal a snow globe from Lex Luthor. The problem being that Lex doesn't run LexCorp anymore, so she has to break into a vault only Superman could get into. But while Selina's gone, Holly bites off more than she can chew in Catwoman Dies, when Hammer and Sickle escape their super prison to go after Catwoman. Holly isn't as good as Selina and gets owned until Selina appears and kicks some butt, but the Ruskies kidnap Helena and thus begins a fight for her life. They eventually do KO the Psycho Soviets, but after that there's no way back to their little slice of heaven. So Karen's in the hospital, Holly's off doing whatever she's doing during Amazon's attack, and well, Selina gets drafted by Batman to join the Bana and stop a terrorist attack in Gotham during issues 70 and 71, Life During Wartime. Yes, it's a tie into Amazon's attack, and yes, I will probably cover that eventually. However, in all that time, Selina finally starts to really truly worry about Helena's safety in being Catwoman's daughter. Issue 71 has Bruce arrange the apparent death of Selina and Helena, but even that doesn't stop Selina's nightmares. The first issue of the three-part Crime Pays storyline, issue 72, is heartbreaking as Selina makes a final decision to put Helena up for adoption, even going to Zatanna to try and get her to erase her memories of Helena so it doesn't hurt less. But Zatanna couldn't even if she wanted to. Luckily for Selina though, a new criminal calling himself the Thief is gunning for her to get her mind off things. Right before this storyline can really wrap itself up, Deadshot and Cat and Boomerang knock out Selina and take her to the prison planet at the end of issue 74. What's the prison planet, you ask? Check out the Salvation Run miniseries for answers. Though in short, all the villains are exiled off-planet for being ne'er-do-wells. Granted, Catwoman's there under the assumption that she's still evil, so, whatever. Issue 75 through 77 has her joining up with Lex's faction on the planet, mostly just to try and find a way off the rock, and she sorta does. She hops down a hole, and Cheetah accidentally starts up a machine, and Catwoman wakes up in Gotham. A Gotham anyways. However, this Gotham, where her sister is a feared, murderous Catwoman, and Selina is able to easily walk through the Justice League, trying to take her out, is all in her mind. Obviously. Martian Manhunter actually helps her get out of that world because it drains her life away. Yeah, seriously. Next, in the long road back, she gets back to Earth and starts gunning for the thief again, as though she was only on a holiday. How'd she get back to Earth? Well, honestly, for the emotional weight it does put on her after she gets back to Earth, it's not really so much explained. So what happened? Well, in the Salvation Run miniseries, she gives up that Martian Manhunter is posing as Blockbuster, which actually leads to his death in Final Crisis. And the final story in the last 3 issues of the series proper is Final Jeopardy, issue 80 to 82. The first issue wraps up the thief storyline, with her coming back at him with a vengeance, since she now is back at her prime. She outsmarts him, kicks his butt, blows up his apartment, and then has the cops arrest him. 81 is her showing off full well that she's done playing the good little kitty, stealing paintings and cop cars, even doing a job with the calculator who screws her over a few times, so some light leverage makes up for that. However, all this builds to Batman having to confront her, and the official final issue, Batman chases Catwoman through East End, until finally she gets cornered and has to actually talk through her problems. She brings up how not having Helena is hurting her, but it was for the best because underneath it all she's Catwoman, and Batman understands this better than anyone else. So, she steals the Batmobile and goes for a joyride. And that's when the series ended in 2008. But wait, there is a fun-filled special, issue 83, that came during the Blackest Night storyline in 2010. Blackest Night was when all the important dead people came back because of the Black Lantern rings as emotion-feasting zombies. So obviously, what dead person would be best matched to take revenge and eat Selina's heart? Why, none other than Black Mask. But since Selina is only feeling willpower when fighting him, he decides to go after someone who we haven't seen in the series in a while, Maggie. But Catwoman isn't alone as she calls up Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn to help save her sister from the psychotic corpse. They do eventually trap Black Mask in a giant plant, but now Maggie knows that her life went wrong because of the demon known as Catwoman. And that is the final ongoing series before New 52. Over in the Bat titles during this time, she is still featured heavily as a pseudo-antagonist, but mostly she and Bruce would just have been a relationship sort, which does lead to the Heart of Hush storyline. Also probably something that's quite interesting is that with the Return of Bruce Wayne storyline, building in Batman number 695 and through 697, actually has her getting a sidekick, Catgirl. But that, dear viewers, are tales from another day. And please, if you liked the video, give us a thumbs up, give us a share, and subscribe to the channel. Every little bit helps, so that I can put forth more content and get a better editing software than I have. Believe me, I'm using Movie Maker. I know I suck. And with that, we also have a Patreon where you can pick what next retrospective we can do, as well as several other shows run by the Comic Archivist. And like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and as always, stay golden, Inklings.